Hi, this is David Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch and listen to your podcasts, as always, it's wonderful to have you along for the experience. And let's start with our sponsor, which, by the way, we mentioned the last couple of podcasts that we're out of sponsors and we need some more. We got one. So anybody else who's thinking of sponsoring, please, this is the time that Klal Yisrael, I don't say all of Klal Yisrael, but those, tens of thousands who listen to this show could really use your help. Sponsored by Eliza. Thank you, Rabbi Orlofsky, for your uplifting and entertaining classes that give so much chizuk. Can the Rav do a show series on Tefillah, why Anshe Knesset Gedola chose the paragraphs they did that we say every day, how the different paragraphs flow together, and how it can feel relevant to me? I want to better understand not just the meaning of the words, but the makeup of the actual tefillahs. I would appreciate if you could explain this. Thank you. Well, Eliza, it sounds like you are really interested in our tefillah shir, which has been going on now for several years. We are right now up to Kriya Shema. We started with Shemona Esrei, and then we did the first two Birchas Kriya Shema, and now we're doing Kriya Shema itself. We're up to the first line, and for the second week on the first line of Shema, and we'll do it again next week. But we go into it in much more depth. We did do a general series on Tefillah some time ago. And I recently, in the question and answer, talked about a short approach to Shemona Esrei. But Bli Neder, we will try to do more episodes on Tefillah, since, of course, that is so important in our time. So thank you, Eliza, for sponsoring and for listening and for being part of us. And you have a tremendous chus to be able to be Marbitz Torah for Klal Yisrael. There is nothing like this, what we're doing here. There really isn't. I got a unpleasant email. I don't like to use the word nasty. Otherwise, I would say I got a nasty email. But I got an unpleasant email. Somebody was complaining, says, I can't believe you put up an episode during Sphira with music. Now, the music is at the end of the episode. So first of all, there's a heta for recorded music. Second of all, it's background music. It's not chasana music, which is what the Ikka Gezerah is. And since it's only at the end of the episode, as soon as we say, that's it, this is Rabbi Orlofsky, this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show, turn it off. You don't have to hear it. But there are people who like to share unpleasant thoughts. So thank you for your unpleasant thought. And to mitigate it, I have two pleasant thoughts. I'm truly blessed that I get a lot of emails from people who appreciate the show. These two just, came in recently, and I wanted to share them. Congratulations on almost the 500 lessons on Torah Anytime. The term lessons might seem a little strange to those of us who are more American, but you'll see why they're using this term. I'm a big fan of the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Can you please give me a shout out on the show? Thank you very much. May Hashem bless you with health and a lot more shiurim. Ezriel Schaeferman, a big fan from Antwerp, Belgium. So apparently we have a following in Belgium, and Yasha Koyach. Well, that's why he uses the term lessons. We Americans would know that there's no lessons in anything I do. But 500 episodes on Torah Anytime, gadzooks. That's a lot. Anyway, so Gewaldic. Kol kavod to those of you, my European audience. I don't know if I should include England in that or not. I know I have a nice following in England, etc. So, Yashikayach and Azriel, that's your shout out. This one I thought was interesting because the last one that came out was talking about Torah is cool, actually 2 episodes ago. I'm a 12th grader in a Beis Yaakov school. I really find your episodes inspiring and add meaning to my days. I finally find someone who understands me. I am a very sharp, smart, deep-thinking girl. Well, obviously, that's me, right? I mean, not a girl, but, I do identify. As I've said many times, I'm one of 6 boys, so there were no girls in my family. So I was the token girl. I did the cooking and the cleaning and the shopping, and yeah. Throughout my years of school, I would ask questions and teachers would get upset at me, calling me nitty gritty and trying to get them. My kids have a similar experience, and there are teachers who either love my kids or hate my kids. The ones who love my kids are the brighter teachers because they love to be able to show how much they know. The average and below average teachers do not care for my kids. We will talk about that when we get to questions and answers. I just need everything to make sense in my head. Go figure. There are people like us out there who like to understand what's going on. Your podcast has made me feel good that I think and that it's okay to ask questions. Yeah, we have this thing called the Pesach Seder, and at the beginning we do a whole bunch of things. Why? Says the Gemara. So the children should ask, inspire questions. Interesting, the day after your Torah is Cool podcast, we were learning something in school that was fascinating. And a girl said, "Whoa, that's so cool." To which my teacher replied, "Torah is not cool. Maybe she should listen to your podcast." Absolutely, she should. Torah is cool and enjoyable to learn. D'erachecha darchei noam. So if the way for Torah to be pleasant is if it's cool, then so be it. Thanks again for the podcast, and please keep it going in Mirza Hashem. So I tell you, these kind of thoughts really give me the chizuk to keep going because, I'm doing this for years, and I'm flying without a flight plan. You know what I mean? Every time I sit down and think, okay, what should I talk about? Now, the truth is that we pre-recorded the last episodes. This one I'm doing now after Pesach. Everything else was really filmed before Pesach. Full disclosure, I hate to show the man behind the curtain, as they say in Wizard of Oz. But so a lot of it pre-recorded. This is the first one I'm really making after Pesach, and I got a lot of stuff built up. So I want to share some thoughts with you before we get down to some business. First of all, I want to mention a sefer. I had the schus when I went actually on Isur Chag because I was away for Pesach. And I was up north, which I want to talk about in a minute. But we went at least to Mikayim, going to the Kaisel. We went on Isur Chag, me and my wife. And I bumped into Kenny Pinzauer. Now I have to say Kenny Pinzauer, Esquire, who I haven't seen in a lot of years. He was involved in NCSY 1980, I'm thinking, 81, something like that. I haven't seen him in a while. I'm always shocked when I see people who I knew as kids and now are like grown-ups, and I myself have never changed because, number one, I've never matured. And second of all, I aged very early, so this way I look exactly the same. Sort of like Gandalf, you know what I mean? From the time he came to Middle-earth, he was already old, even though he was a Meyer. Okay, I'm getting off track. But so when he was there, he mentioned that he had written this book, Ein Od Milvadai, which basically brings different makaros on the idea of hashgacha pratis and ideas to it. Very, very thorough. And, I want to give a shout out to this sefer. If you would like to contact Kenny and ask him about it, we'll put up his email on the screen. But it's capital KEP, and then small INCZOWER. So KE, I guess, is Kenny, and then the P goes for the Pinzauer at gmail.com. So it's a beautiful sefer. I just wanted to give it a shout out, and mention that. Okay, so this is my essay, How I Spent My Pesach. I mentioned on the podcast twice, just as a sort of throwaway line, that I'm checking out this hotel up north that had just basically turned Mahadran. And I was going to see what it was. It was called the Nof Kinneret. It used to be the Bali. I knew people used to go when it was a Bali. They're in the process of refurbishing it. The manager is a fellow, Mark, who's Dutch. And he used to be the manager in the Kinar Resort. And then he took over this place. And the travel agent of a castle, my kids decided that I'm too old to make Pesach. I said, I'm fine. And they said, no, you're too old. You and Ima are too old. And we will all go with you to a hotel. I said, no, I'm really fine. And they said, no, you're really too old. Trust me. My cleaning lady, Raji, who was from Sri Lanka, said, Mister, as long as I'm still here, then you can make Pesach. And I happen to agree with her. But my children were convinced. So they called up Castles, which is a travel agent here in Erzsel, and they priced the usual Mahadran hotels that people go to, and they're just outside of my price range. The sponsorships really just cover the cost of production over here. It doesn't really make me a living, as they say. So they mentioned, but there's this hotel that's refurbishing and is going to, be open for Pesach and have a good hashgacha. So, it'll be lower price because they're just coming on the market. So I took a few of my kids, and my wife, a few of my kids. We went up to see it. And it was a chatzi churban. At the time, there were displaced people who were living there, and they were refurbishing. And he was starting to build an auditorium, so there would be a place to daven and to have entertainment. We went up just before Purim. They just had the outline of it. I said, "There's no way they're going to have this ready for Pesach." Yeah, and they were refurbishing the rooms. The rooms that we saw that were refurbished were very nice, and they put out lunch again for these were the refugees from the north who they were hosting, and I thought it was a lovely spread, and they told us it would be very nice, and so we took a chance, and we went there, and I mentioned on my podcast that I'm going up there. I'm not making a program, but anybody who wants to come, we'll hang out together. At least 10 rooms came because of me. It might be more, but I counted 10 rooms. And they said, when are the shiurim? And I said, no, I told you it's not a program. I'm just going to be up here. And then they said, when are the shiurim? And so I made some shiurim and I wrote them out with a pen on a little piece of paper and hung it on the message board down in the lobby. And anywhere between 20 and 25 people showed up, English speakers. And there were others who said we couldn't make this one or couldn't make that, etc. And that was just from a quick little mention. Anyway, this place has tremendous potential. We had a very nice Pesach. My kids, who went all out, first of all, they put gift bags for everybody in the family in their rooms. And they made up their own little benchers. And they made one of these giant signs, which was by our table the entire time, that says, Orlofsky Pesach 2025, we are the party. And my family is a party. There's no question about it. They are the party. And the kid they put together a video beforehand, and they had the kids all they wrote a song, and the kids all sang this song and did this dance, and it was a lot of fun. And we had our own room for a Seder. We made our own Seder, and some of the people who came to the hotel asked to join us. So we had some guests, sort of our communal Seder, and it was a lot of fun. It's a 3-star hotel. I'm saying if you go to the Waldorf, you go to the Plaza, you go to even the Ramada, those are 5 stars. The Kinar, Lavi, those are 4 stars. This is a solid 3 stars. There's no indoor pool. There is a sort of a sauna, little like sort of small pool on the inside. They don't have a lot of facilities. They didn't offer a lot of in the way of entertainment and shiurim. So they had some, so it's modest. The food is fine. It's not like a wow. It's good food, fine food. My son, Shlomo from Schleim's smoked meats business, those who are in Eretz Yisrael want to order from Schleim's, you can find him online, Schleim's Meats. So he was making observations, and he says they have a lot of potential here. They should do this. I said, make notes. Anyway, so we went through the whole experience, and I sat down after Pesach with Mark, and it was interesting. I drove over to the Kinara to see my good friend Shlomo Skolnick. He does a program in the Kinar. I borrowed one of his programs. I took one of his programs to look it over and see how it goes. He's travel deal and there's a travel organization. He says, look, I can't represent a hotel like this. It's only 3 stars. My people really want 5 stars. They Bekoshi will go to the Kinar, but I give him a whole program. We discussed it. And he said to me, I'll tell you right now, I haven't seen the hotel, but the best part about it is Mark. He was the best thing in the Kinar. He'll definitely be the best thing over there, So I went to Mark after Pesach and I said, look, there's 170 rooms here. Between your staff and my staff and family, etc., probably need about 20 rooms, which means we have 150 rooms. I'm sure I could fill up 150 rooms. Yeah. And I said, because there are some people who take 2 rooms. There are some people who take 8 rooms. Let's say on average 3 rooms. That's only 50 families. I've already got 20 families who said they want to come. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I made them this offer. I have not heard back from him. But if it does, then I think I will finally actually make a Pesach program. And it has been, I told Mark, I said, I'm like a spring that has been wound up for like 10 years and I'm ready now. I've been planning this over in my head for such a long time. Anyway, it could be nothing whatsoever will come of this. And this was a complete waste of time. I just wanted to share it with you anyway, because I'm an oversharer. Or my entire family is. We don't know how to play our cards close to our chest. We say everything, and like I say, we're oversharers. So I'm very excited about the possibility. So that's one to bring you in. I've been talking now for a couple of months about answering basic questions and making a new course on that. And people keep asking me, when is it going to start? Full disclosure, all of my online shiurim were set up by producer Michael, who, has left the show, and I can't get a hold of him, and I don't know how to set up one of these online shiurim. So the ones that we have, he set up. So Michael, if you're still watching the podcast, reach out to me, please, because I've Anashim Mevakshim, as we say here in Israel. So I would like very much to be able to offer that. So in the meantime, I'm kind of stuck. So just a little shout out over there. Okay, that's more or less our bits of business, I think, that we need to take care of. I have a a good friend personally and of the show, who we met basically through the podcast, Hasidic fellow, and when he's at Eretz Yisrael, he comes for to be in the audience, to be in the part of the live audience. Every now and then you'll hear like somebody clapping. That's the live audience. Anyway, so he called up, to wish me a good Pesach, and he asked me a very interesting question, a question that I had never thought about before. And he said to me, "What's your favorite part of the Haggadah?" That's the sort of question my grandson Ben usually asks me. Ben loves to ask those kind of questions. What's your favorite this? What's this? But how does that go? I don't know if you remember, I had a Purim episode during COVID, and my son Yaakov and my son Shlomo basically were interviewing me and asking me, "What's your favorite this? What's your favorite that?" Kind of things like that. They're not always easy to answer, and it's an interesting kind of question. What's your favorite part of the Haggadah? That's a hard question for me to answer. Somebody, in fact, wrote me and said, "You really should put out a Haggadah." I'm going to have a little problem doing that because there's a Rabbi wine Haggadah that was sponsored by my nephew, and it's called the Orlofsky Haggadah. So I remember when I was first making my website, I wanted to call it Orlofsky.com, and somewhere it already had the name. He was selling CDs. I don't know who he was. It wasn't Jewish, so it was already taken up. So there already is an Orlofsky Haggadah. I guess I'll have to rebrand it as a Rabbi Orlofsky Haggadah. But it is an idea because I just love the Haggadah. I love every part of it. So what's your favorite part? It's a little tricky. So, when you answer these kind of questions off the cuff, it doesn't, really spend a lot of time thinking about it. I said, maybe the Dalit Banim, because you can assign roles. You know what I mean? Russia. At my Seder this year, I said, Chacham. I said, who wants to be the Chacham? So one of my grandchildren said, me. He says, Chacham Ahu Omer. He reads the question. I said, who wants to be the Russia? So another one of my grandchildren said, me. And his mother says, no. He says, yes, Mom. So that was fun. But I gave it a little more thought. I said, probably the Psukim and the second half of the Haggadah, because most people don't really go into them. And it was interesting when I was giving my Motzi Shabbos Shiurim on a regular basis. So there was one year that I went to America for Pesach, probably to be with my mother after my father was nifter. And I said over a vort that I saw, I don't remember now where I saw it, but I just remember it. When it darshans the psukim, so it says, B'msei ma'at k'moshe kosov, biyad chazakah k'moshe kosov. It brings a pasuk to support everything except the very first thing. It says, V'yered mitzrayma, onis al pia dibur. Against his will. Didn't want to. They had no choice. It doesn't bring a pasuk. One of the Mefarshim say, because there is no other reason to leave Eretz Yisrael, unless you're honest al pia dibur. I don't have to bring a pasuk to prove that. Why else would you leave Eretz Yisrael? I mention that because when I see these people, Israelis, who go to spend Pesach in Europe, one of these places, Switzerland, you're leaving Eretz Yisrael on Pesach. Maybe the most ironic, the people who spend Pesach in Egypt, like, you have this backwards. We wanted to leave there, not go there. Yeah. So it is interesting idea. But I like all those drushes. I really enjoy it. And so I said, because when someone asks a question, usually they've given more thought to it than I have, since I'm getting the question for first part. So I said, what's your favorite part? And he said to me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu chishev es haketz. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu works out the time of redemption. And I said, what is it that you like about that part? He goes, I find it very reassuring. Now, again, I saw this vart a long time ago. Libi Oimer, it was in the Jep Haggadah from maybe 40 years ago. I think this is where I saw this little vart. And it said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu chishev es haketz. So Pashas, how hard is it to figure out the kates? Right? We all do those Rashis. You know, it's in a number of places. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Avraham, Yodei Teda ki ger yezerecha be'eretz lo lehem ba'avodim ve'ino asem be'abamei shana. Your children will be strangers in a land not theirs, and they will be slaves, and they'll be oppressed. And the nation that oppresses them, I will judge, and then they will go out with great wealth. So Rashi says over there, it doesn't say they'll be oppressed. They'll be strangers, 1, and they'll be slaves, 2, and they'll be oppressed. There's a process here. So obviously, the clock doesn't start ticking till you have Zarecha. And only Yitzchak will be called Zarecha and not Yishmael. So it starts from the birth of Yitzchak. And from the birth of Yitzchak till he has Yaakov is 60 years. From the time Yaakov is born till he goes down to Egypt is 130 years. That's 190. And then we were down in Egypt for 210 years. Gematria Redu. They went down. So that's 400 years. That's really easy to calculate. Well, you see the Bnei Ephraim made a mistake in that they left 30 years earlier because they counted the 400 years from the bris bein habesarim when Avraham was told about it and he was 70 at the time. So they went out 30 years earlier. They made that mistake. So when it comes to these calculations, the Gemara and Megillah, the whole 70 year, we were told we're going to go into Gullus for 70 years. And everybody was, Nebuchadnezzar had a problem with this, Belshazzar had a problem with this, Achashverosh had a problem with this. No one was able to calculate these 70 years. That was 70 years. 400 years. So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu chishev es haketz. Kates is 190 in Gematria. So it says he figured out how to knock off 190 years by counting from the birth of Yitzchak instead of from when we were actually in Egypt. The Jewish people didn't know this. And that's why every time things looked bad, they said to Moshe, this is why we said we didn't want to leave Egypt. Or this is why let's set up a leader and go back to Egypt and finish up those 190 years. Because you obviously made a mistake, Moshe, just like the Bnei Ephraim did. These calculations are really tricky. Those of you who have done Daf Yomi, you recently did the Gemara in Sanhedrin, where it makes all the different calculations of when Mashiach is supposed to come. And there's all kinds of different calculations. And the Gemara says all of these dates have basically passed. It didn't happen. Just means these were times that were mesugal for it. The actual time, we don't know. We don't know. But what do we do with all the calculations? HaKadosh Baruch Hu chishev es haketz. Don't worry, he's very good with numbers. He'll work out all of the nevuahs and all of the calculations and everything so that it makes sense. And even though there are times when the little arrows on the top of the Tylenol bottle line up, so it's easier to pop it open. There are certain times that are more misugal, more set, a better time, more auspicious time for Mashiach to come, but it keeps turning. And Kodesh Baruch Hu can open it at any time. And that's why we say in the second part of the Haggadah, which I say is the part, like I say, one of the things that I enjoy. Tseul mad, ma bikesh Lavan ha'arami. Take a look how Lavan was worse than Paro, because Paro only wanted to kill the boys. He wanted to kill everybody. Why are we bringing Lavan into here? Because we could have had Gullus Mitzrayim by Lavan, because it doesn't mention where the exile will be. And the entire experience of Lavan and Yaakov is a microcosm of everything that happened in Mitzrayim. B'Masei Ma'at, he went down as one person. Yeah. And he turned into a whole nation. And he came out B'Rechush Gadol. Yeah. Had the Chazal say 1.2 million sheep that he took out with him from Lavan, and came out with great wealth. And just like he leaves and travels for 6 days, so the people who saw him leave run 3 days to Lavan, and now Lavan is 6 days away, and he does the entire journey in 1 day, just like Paro did by Kriyas Yamsuf. And he confronts him, and everything is right there. You have all the makings of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And the only reason we didn't fulfill it from there was because it would have been too hard. He would have been, the whole Mitzrayim experience with Paro and the Egyptians wasn't as bad as what it would have been like if we stuck it out with Lavan. But there's a simpler question. Yeah. If you're going to count that as the Gullus Mitzrayim, it doesn't work out with the 400 years. Because Baruch Hu Chishev is a Kates. He can work out the calculations. He's very good with those numbers. Everything will work out. And that's why where the starting point is, how you make these calculations, all of these things that Kadosh Baruch Hu can work out. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah. And that's why when you see people who spend so much time on the various calculations, there was one time when there was a messianic fervor that was gripping Eastern Europe. And the Chavetz Chaim, who used to keep a suitcase packed with a new suit for when Mashiach would come, he said, I promise you he's not coming this year. Don't worry about it. Why? Because messianic fever doesn't get you anywhere. I wait for him every single day. Mashiach can come at any time. And as the Gemara says, he'll come behesed hadas. When you're not looking for him, when you set a date and say he's going to come now, by definition, it's not going to work. Douglas Adams, lahavdil, you'll forgive me because I do tend to go off in obscure directions. There was this fellow, Douglas Adams, who wrote a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. After he wrote the third book, it started to be called the Hitchhiker Trilogy. When he put out the fourth book, he called it the fourth in the inappropriately named Hitchhiker Trilogy. Trilogy is 3 books. When he put out the fifth book, he said, the fifth in the increasingly inappropriately named Hitchhiker Trilogy. But in one of them, Ford Prefect, who's this alien who rescues this Earthling just before Earth blows up, and they're traveling through the galaxy. So at one point, he's looking at something, and he says, what are you looking at? And he says, I think I see an SEP field. And he keeps moving his head and moving this way, and trying to be able to see something. Arthur Dent, he's the Earthling. And he says, what's an SEP field? It's called someone else's problem. He says, if you put up an SEP field and someone senses that it's someone else's problem, they don't see it at all. He said, if you can you put on an SEP field on a mountain, people will walk over it, through it, and they won't see it at all because it's someone else's problem. It's absolutely brilliant. You see it out of the corner of your eyes. And the only way to see it is behes chadas. You can only find it if you're not looking for it. So you have to like try to move your head, jerk it suddenly to be able to see it. Ends up it's a spaceship and rescues them, and fine. But the point is, like, you're going to be expecting Mashiach to come. Mashiach's not going to come. It has to be with an SEP field. It has to be that you weren't looking for Mashiach, and it came from the side. How does that going to work out with all the cheshbonos? Kadosh Baruch Hu Chishivas. He works out everything. Don't worry about it. He can make all of the calculations necessary so that everything makes sense. Somebody brought the marshal once. If you have a jigsaw puzzle with a couple of pieces missing, yeah, like the song Leroy Brown, it looked like a jigsaw puzzle with a couple of pieces gone, yeah. So if you have one of those gigantic puzzles, I used to buy these for my kids, especially Hanukkah time. We would spend Hanukkah working on one of these giant jigsaw puzzles. By the way, I'll give you a nachas report. I had a chassid in Beit Shemesh. Ends up that my kids in Beit Shemesh all got together to make their own little Hanukkah party. So I come in, and they baked all kinds of exciting Hanukkah foods, and they had I guess it was the Miami Hanukkah tape playing, and they were all sitting around the table doing a jigsaw puzzle. I said, "What's this?" He goes, "Abba, this is Hanukkah." So you have one of those big, puzzles. The problem is, what do you do with them afterwards? My son once did one of these 5,000 piece puzzles. It was a gigantic puzzle, and I had to get it framed. It's still hanging in what used to be his room. Yeah. So you put that much effort in it. There's a special kind of glue that you put on that holds it together, and then you can mount it and hang it up. But anyway, so if you're missing a couple of pieces, which unfortunately happens every now and then, you make a jigsaw puzzle, there's a few pieces missing, just to give you that sense of lack of shleimus. Yeah. So you can tell what the picture is. It's just something else that's missing, A very interesting thing. I came in to my brother Jason, who is a tremendous machnes orchem, and his wife Shelley. So after Jason passed away, so I used to stay at Shelley when I'd come to America, and she was doing this this jigsaw puzzle, and she said Jason loved jigsaw puzzles, and I saw this jigsaw puzzle which is all like clocks, and my brother Jason used to collect clocks. He has on the wall over there, a whole different types of clocks, all kinds of different theme clocks, etc. And I used to give my shiurim from the house when I was there, my online shiurim. And I had to be careful to start it a few minutes after the hour, because otherwise you have these 20 clocks all going off. It's extremely disturbing. But anyway, so it was a jigsaw puzzle with clocks. He says, I know Jason liked jigsaw puzzles, and I saw this one with clocks, so I figured he was sending me a message. He wanted me to do it, And you're sitting there making the jigsaw puzzle, but sometimes you suddenly notice a couple of pieces missing. You could still tell what the picture is. Whereas with a Kadosh Baruch Hu, you do the whole jigsaw puzzle, and you add the last piece, and it's something completely different. Completely different. And that's an amazing thing. That's an amazing thing, that everything you think is suddenly turned around. You think you anticipate it. You think you see it coming. And that's why the Geula is described in the terms of laughter. Az yimale schayk pinai. Then our mouths will be filled with laughter. Why? Because if your mouth is filled with Pinot, that means that you've been drinking too much. But why? Because a joke is based on the fact that you set everything up and you know exactly what's going to happen, and then boom, it turns around and it's completely what you didn't expect at the last moment. And that's the Geula. Everything you think, look at the Purim story. You think you know everything that's going to happen, then all of a sudden, boom, it turns around. And you have a completely different reality than the one you were going to have. So, since Mitzrayim is the mother of all Goliaths, we know there are Arab Goliaths, but Mitzrayim is the source of all Goliaths. It's where it starts from, the mother of Goliaths, and everything else comes out of that. So, Mirz Hashem, as we're coming out of Goliath Mitzrayim, going into the Geula, we're in the process of it, because that's what, when Kodesh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu originally, he says, I'm taking them out of Mitzrayim to bring them to Har Sinai and give them the Torah. It's a process. That's why the Ramban says in his introduction to Sefer Shmos, which is a Sefer of Geula, of redemption, how come the second half of it deals with the Mishkan? I mean, I understand we get to Yisro and Mishpatim, which is the story of Matan Torah. So that's it. We're done. So he says, because the Mishkan is a traveling Har Sinai, it goes with them. Ki mitzion teitzei Torah. And the Mishkan is supposed to be a source for us to access that Torah and keep it with us all the time. I mean, be able to keep that Har Sinai experience alive. So the Geula of Mitzrayim, to a certain extent, concludes with Mamad Har Sinai. That's why, as the Ramban says, Sfiras HaOmer is like one long Chol Hamoed. It's all one Yontif till we get to Har Sinai and we get the Torah, which is the Kodesh Baruch Hu tells this to Moshe Rabbeinu in Shmos already, Parsha Shmos. This is, I'm taking them out of Mitzrayim to bring them to Har Sinai to be able to give them the Torah. So as we go to finish this Geula, in Mirz Hashem, we will lay the foundation for the future Geula. And remember, expect it when you least expect it. Yeah. You try to catch it out of the corner of your eye. It's an SCP field protecting where Mashiach is going to come. And when you don't expect it, that's when it's going to take place. Okay. And that brings us to the question and answer portion of our program. I'm going to do two questions together because they're just variations on the same one. By Anonymous, what should one do if he sees his Rebbe doing something that he thinks is wrong? That's the first one. Here's the second one. There's no name on this one. It's not even anonymous. How do I respect my Machanchos even when they are not treating me in a positive way and are making my school life unenjoyable? So both of these are more or less the same question. So let's start with a technical answer and then a practical answer. Technical answer is Hevidanis ko adam lekaf schus. So the halacha is like this. If the person is a tzaddik, a Talmid Chacham, and you see them do something wrong, you're mechuyev to be danlun lekaf schus. You have to assume that they had good intention. The Gemara tells the story of a worker who is going home for Yontif, and he says to the boss, I want to get my salary. He says, I don't have any money. He says, okay, give me metatel and give me movable property. He says, I don't have any. He says, give me food. He says, I don't have any. So give me a piece of land. I don't have any. Okay. So the person goes home, has nothing for Yontif. And then Chol Hamoed, he comes with donkey loads of food and gifts and all kinds of wonderful things for him. He said, when I told you I didn't have any money, what did you think? He says, I thought that, I don't remember, I'm paraphrasing here. I thought it was all tied up, in investments. So when I told you I didn't have any lights, I thought you were makdish all of your land. When I said I didn't have any title, I thought you gave that to the basic mission. I thought this, He says, I swear to you, everything you said is exactly what happened. unlikely. Yeah. As they say in Yiddish, bisla far-fetched. Yeah. Far-fetched. Yeah. It's a Yiddish word, far-fetched. Yeah. But he was danim l'kaf schus. And it turns out he was right. And that's why sometimes you look at situations and you say, this can't possibly make any sense. And it turns out that, Pesach Kron tells a story about somebody who saw this chosh of a person on the plane. And the whole flight, he's not learning. He's reading like secular science book or something like that, And he says, but this guy is the Rav of his community. He's a chosh of a guy, he's not learning. Then they made a minyan. He didn't go. I says, he doesn't daven? He doesn't daven, he doesn't learn. He goes, wow, when I get back to America, I'm going to tell everybody. And as they get off the plane, he sees this guy standing there, and they bring out the Aron. He was an Ovel. I should say, actually, he was an Onain. He's not allowed to learn. He's not allowed to daven. He's not allowed to do anything. But this guy looks at him, and he sees the story, and you think you understand what's going on, and you don't know. There are things you don't understand here. The mashal that the Chazal give when bad things happen is that you could see a doctor, someone broke their arm and it's set wrong. They have to re-break the arm and set it again. And you see this guy breaking the guy's arm, and you're sure this guy is the cruelest person ever. But you understand now that there's something else. Okay. If a person is a Russia, you should always judge him with the worst intentions. Right? You just assume it's bad intentions. If a person's a Beinani, an average person, it's midas chasidus to judge them favorably, but you don't have to. So, if your Rebbe is a good person, and you could think of him as a tzaddik, and you see him doing something wrong, so then you have to you have to be dadim l'kaf schus. Well, that's not really the question, as I'm understanding it. The question is when we're talking about in terms of education. Now, I feel like I told this story recently, but I have a shul in my chutzner, and my room opens out onto it. There's a little door there. My wife sits there. That's where she davens. That's where Ezra's Noshim, right? Mamish next door to the chutzner, and I sit at the front table. So we're mamish right across from each other. They were making the sheberach for cholim, and my wife opens the curtain a bit and says, "Mention so and so." I said, "What's the name?" Tells me the name, and I got up from my seat and I walked literally 3 steps to the gabbai, and then I walked back 3 steps and said, "What's the name?" So my memory shot. So it could be I just did this, There was one time when I did this whole routine in the Motzi Shabbos shir, which I thought was pretty funny. And my wife said, yeah, it was very good. It was just as funny last shir when you said it over the same exact thing. So it could be I've said this recently. I don't remember. I was at a panel answering questions. It was a Shabbos dedicated to chinuch. And on the panel was Rabbi Leff and Rabbi Foya, Rabbi Zechariah Greenwald, Rabbi Brizak, and me. The way I described it is 2 Adam Gadol, 2 great people, 2 chinuch experts, and me. That was how I saw the panel. And we were getting different questions, and everybody was giving answers. And one person, the MC, who was Rav Gav, who's been on the show. So he says, what do you do if you see your son's Rebbe made a mistake? Now, because everybody in the panel are good people except for me, they all understood the question as, he said pshat in the Tosfos wrong. Yeah, that's what they assume. It means that your son's Rebbe made a mistake, And right down the line, everybody gave basically the same answer. You don't want to undermine the Rebbe. It could be, you're saying the pshat of the Yeshua, and he's saying the pshat of the Maharam. It could be he's sort of like this, that. Everybody said the same thing. Until it came to me, being neither an Adam Gadol nor a Chinuch expert, and I said, well, it depends. If the Rebbe smashes your kid's head against the wall, don't defend the Rebbe. If the Mora embarrasses your daughter in front of the entire class, don't defend the Mora. Children have a keen sense of justice. And my parents were old school, and it didn't matter what terrible thing my teachers did. They said, you probably deserved it. They always took the teacher's side. And of course, this reinforced in me the sense of injustice that exists in the world. And I was very hurt and very upset about it. But, that's school of thought. But when my kids come home, or as one parent told me, my daughter kept raising her hand that she had to go to the bathroom and the Mora wouldn't let her go until she wet herself at her seat. And when she called up the teacher to complain, the teacher said, well, she should have gone before class. When a teacher decides to humiliate a student in front of the entire class, not for educational purposes, but just because it seems to tickle their fancy, or they feel threatened by the kid, There was this one older woman teacher who would pick on all of the pretty girls in class. I don't know why, but if you were pretty, she'd give you extra punishments, extra assignments, insult you. I don't know why. If you were plain Jane, you were fine. She was very nice to you. Different kind of things. And if you have a kid, who tends to be a little louder, a little this, etc., instead of knowing how to develop them, they're going to break them. I heard this from a fifth grade teacher once. I broke him. I broke that kid, It's like, wow, it takes a lot to break a fifth grader. You should be very proud of yourself, So am I going to defend that? No. I'm going to tell my children what your teacher did was wrong. Not only was it wrong, it was evil. Do not emulate them. It's a terrible thing they did. Well, everybody went again on the panel and said, well, of course, Orlofsky's right. It depends on the situation. They couldn't even anticipate such a thing. But I had a Rebbe who smacked one of my kids' heads against the wall. I've had teachers who insulted my children publicly and made fun of them and attacked them, and all kinds of terrible, terrible behavior. So am I going to defend those teachers? No, I'm going to defend my children. I may not be able to change the situation because sometimes you can't. Especially if you live in a town where there's like one school and one teacher and one class, and there is no other place to go. Or certain schools have a policy. We don't switch classes. Even though your kid is being destroyed by this teacher, we have a policy. I'm always amazed when they have policies. Policies. That's our shita. It's our shita. When I was getting married, so my parents didn't really care what we did. But my in-laws, we had taken a fancy hall, and they did not want to have separate seating. They wanted their friends to be able to sit together. So I was in yeshiva at the time, and the mashgiach says to me, Dovid, you have to fight to the death to get separate seating. This is Harag Val Yavar. I know the Rosh Yeshiva sheet on this. You could ask him, he'll tell you. So I told to my Kala. My Kala said, it's going to be a big fight. My in-laws were very upset, a whole thing like this. So I finally decided, I'll ask the Rosh Yeshiva. He says, no, don't make a fight about it. But they told me this is his shita. It's a shita. Because if you're smart, then you know how to work with it. But this teacher is destroying your kid. They won't move the kid to another class. So we have a shita. A shita. One of the worst things in Klal Yisrael, people have shitas. I have a shita. Gedolei Torah know how to work with that. That's why sometimes when I have a shaila, people said to me, well, decide what you want. If you go to this one, he'll tell you this. If you go to this one, he'll tell you that, And in my experience, that never happened. Everybody would look at it from the the point of view of the facts of the case, and they would often surprise people with their psukim. So, when people say to me, I already know the shita. Yeah, you don't have shitas. So if you have a teacher who's a bad teacher and you can't do anything about it, you're stuck. So I think it was before book 4 or book 5 of Harry Potter, those of you who may have read the series. And there's this character there, Snape, Professor Snape. And he's very, very mean in general to all the children, and particularly to Harry Potter. You don't know why until the end of the book, and etc. So the question was that they asked her, why does Dumbledore keep Snape there if he's so mean and such a bad teacher? Now, she didn't want to give away the ending. There's a different answer. But she gave an answer in the interim, and she said, because he is a master educator. And part of education is knowing you're going to have bad teachers. And that is the message I've given my children. I said, this is a bad teacher. There are a lot of teachers who are average, and there are some teachers who are below average. And there are some who are sociopaths. Like I said, if you're going in there, I'm going to break this kid, or I'm going to smack someone's head against the wall, something like that, you don't belong in education. There's something seriously wrong with you, that you'd want to do that to a kid, So I would tell my kids, keep your head down, get through the year as best as you can, and that's it. Try not to engage, try to stay out of their way, and they're a bad teacher. And I'll help you with whatever I can do. I will supplement it, etc. I will not tell them they're a good teacher and I'm sure you must be wrong, like my parents did. No, they're bad teachers and they're bad people. And never that you're encountering this, because in life we will encounter bad people. So if it's a good person and you see they're doing something and you're not really sure how you can answer it up, okay, be down the kafschus. If they're an average teacher and they do something, midas chasidus, be down the kafschus. If they're bad people, then you for yourself have to know, I'm not crazy. This person is a bad person, and I am not going to emulate them. And if you're a parent, tell your children, do not act the way this person acts. They're bad people. What they're doing is bad. And don't try to defend it. And so for ourselves, we have to know that the majority of the population is average. There are exceptional people, but not all of them go into education. And so if you have an exceptional teacher, thank God every single day. And if you have an average teacher, okay, don't push them. I told this story about my daughter more than once, who's very smart. And this teacher thought that she's the Rashka Bahag and she knows everything. And she's, and my daughter, who's very smart, would ask these very deep, complicated questions and she couldn't answer them. It made her look bad. So at parent teachers, she told my wife to tell my daughter not to ask questions she doesn't know the answer to. Well, of course, there's no way of knowing that. So she didn't say anything. And then another week later, she called up my wife and said, she's not participating. So my daughter said I had to sit there and try to think of a question that was easier enough that she could answer. That's sick. That's sick. But okay, like I say. So that would be more or less my approach to it. And that's it for this episode. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can sign up for one of our online shiurim. You can sponsor an episode, sponsor question and answer, sponsor Parsha in 5. And you could download the theme song and listen to it after Sfira. Yeah, and that's it for now. Until next time, I am Dovid Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. The Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode. And we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.